Hello, and welcome back to The Peaceful Retirement. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about something that probably keeps many of you up at night, something that affects your health, your finances, and your peace of mind for the next 3, 4, or even 5 decades of your life. We're talking about Medicare. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Medicare? Isn't that just signing up when you turn 65? It's straightforward, right? Wrong. And the fact that you're wrong isn't your fault. In fact, most women reach their 65th birthday thinking they understand Medicare, and then they realize they've made expensive, irreversible decisions that will cost them thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars over the rest of their lives. I want you to think about something for a moment. When you turned 21, did anyone sit you down and explain your healthcare options in depth? Probably not. When you started your first job, did your HR department walk you through insurance with the care and detail it deserved? Maybe, maybe not. And now at 50, 55, 60, the time when healthcare actually becomes critical, when the decisions you make today will echo through your retirement for decades to come, most of us are left to figure it out ourselves. Or worse, we listen to someone's cousin's friend who knows about this stuff. Here's what I want you to know. Medicare is not complicated because it's complex. It's complicated because the government designed it to be confusing, and the insurance companies benefit from that confusion. When you don't fully understand your options, you make conservative choices. Conservative choices often mean expensive choices. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the 11 things Medicare doesn't cover that catch most women completely off guard. How to calculate the true cost of Medicare, not just the premium. The one decision you make at 65 that determines your healthcare costs for life. How wealthy women strategically use Medicare to actually save money while getting better care. The Medicare trap that costs women an average of $4,200 per year and how to avoid it. When you should actually delay Medicare even if you're eligible. This isn't about fear. This is about clarity, and clarity leads to confidence, and confidence leads to peace of mind. So let's start with a story. A few years ago, I met a woman named Susan. She was 64, about to turn 65. She'd worked as an interior designer for 40 years. She had a good income, around $120,000 a year. She'd saved responsibly. She had a nice home, money in the bank, and she was ready to retire. Susan thought she had Medicare figured out. She'd heard friends talk about it. She'd seen the Medicare Gov commercials. She assumed that at 65 she'd get Medicare, the government would handle her health care, and she'd move on. What Susan didn't know was that Medicare is actually 4 different things, each with their own rules, their own enrollment deadlines, and their own consequences if you don't sign up on time. 3 months after she turned 65, Susan got her Medicare card in the mail. She felt relieved. I made it, she thought. Now I can relax. Then, a few months later, she went to fill a prescription for blood pressure medication. The pharmacist said, "That'll be $240. Susan was shocked. With her previous employer insurance, that medication cost $30. She called Medicare. She called her insurance company. Nobody had a good answer. What they eventually explained, after hours of phone calls, was that Susan had made a critical error when she turned 65. She'd enrolled in Original Medicare, which covers doctor visits and hospital care, but she hadn't added a prescription drug plan. When you don't add a prescription drug plan within 63 days of your 65th birthday, you face what's called a late enrollment penalty. This penalty is permanent. For the rest of her life, Susan will pay more for prescriptions than she would have if she'd simply added a drug plan when she turned 65. By my calculations, that mistake will cost her approximately $4,200 per year. Over a 25-year retirement, that's $105,000. $105,000. All because nobody told her about Part D. All because the enrollment window was only 63 days, and it quietly closed without anyone sending her a warning. But here's what's interesting. Susan's mistake wasn't stupidity. In fact, Susan is a smart woman. She reads, she pays attention, but the Medicare system is deliberately designed to confuse you. and the consequences of confusion are permanent. Susan's story is not unique. In fact, I'd say Susan's mistake is so common that it happens to someone in America every single minute. Every single minute. Now, here's what most financial advice sites don't tell you. Susan's situation was completely preventable. And more importantly, with the right knowledge, she could have set up her Medicare in a way that would have actually saved her money compared to her working years. But first, you need to understand what Medicare actually is, okay? Let's be really clear about something. Medicare is not one thing. It's actually a collection of different insurance programs that the government created at different times for different reasons. And they all interact in ways that are genuinely confusing. Think of Medicare like a wardrobe. You have 4 different outfits, and depending on what you're doing, you need to wear the right one. Part A is hospital insurance. It covers hospital stays, skilled nursing facilities, hospice care, and home health care. Most people get Part A automatically when they turn 65. There's no premium most of the time. It just happens. Part B is medical insurance. It covers doctor visits, outpatient services, lab work, ambulances, durable medical equipment, all the stuff you do outside of a hospital. Part B costs money. Right now, the average is around $164 per month. But here's the thing. If you don't enroll in Part B when you're first eligible, you pay a permanent penalty. We'll talk about that in a minute. Part D is prescription drug coverage, and this is where the Susan story comes from. Part D covers your medications. It's optional, but if you don't get it when you first become eligible, you pay a permanent penalty. We're talking about $4,000, $5,000 per year in some cases. Part C, and this is where it gets interesting, is sometimes called Medicare Advantage. It's a way to get Parts A, B, and D all bundled together through a private insurance company rather than through the government. Some women love Medicare Advantage. Other women lose tens of thousands of dollars on it. These 4 parts are the foundation, but there's more. Because Medicare doesn't cover everything. In fact, Medicare is pretty limited in what it covers. And this is where most women get blindsided. Medicare does not cover long-term care. If you need help at home for years, a home health aide, assisted living, a nursing home, Medicare only covers a small portion and only under very specific circumstances. We're talking about potentially $50,000, $100,000 per year coming out of your own pocket. Most dental work, Medicare doesn't cover cleanings, fillings, root canals, crowns. If you want dental insurance, you have to buy it separately. And yes, dental health affects heart health, so this matters. Vision care, glasses, contacts, eye exams, not covered. Hearing aids, this one is big. Hearing aids cost $3,000, $6,000 per pair, and Medicare doesn't cover them. Routine foot care, believe it or not, diabetics especially need regular foot care, and it's not covered. Cosmetic procedures, obviously. Most preventive services out of the U.S., if you travel internationally, and many of you do, Medicare doesn't follow you. So when women look at Medicare and think, great, the government is covering my health care, what they really mean is, the government is covering about 60% of my health care costs. The other 40% is my responsibility. And this is where a lot of wealthy women actually get smarter than the system. Here's something that most financial advisors won't tell you because they're too busy explaining what Medicare is. They don't have time to explain what wealthy women actually do with Medicare. When you understand that Medicare has gaps and you're a woman with assets, you have choices. Choice 1, the Medicare supplement strategy. Instead of choosing Medicare Advantage, Part C, some women choose Original Medicare, Parts A and B, and then add what's called a Medigap or supplemental insurance policy. This is private insurance that fills the gaps in Original Medicare. Now, Medigap is expensive. We're talking $150, $300 per month, depending on the plan you choose. But here's the math that wealthy women understand. If you have significant assets, and significant here might mean $500,000 in liquid assets, spending extra on a premium Medigap plan might actually be financially smart. Why? Because it protects your assets from catastrophic healthcare costs. One hospitalization, one major diagnosis, one fall that leads to long-term care. A comprehensive Medigap plan can keep you from having to liquidate your investments, sell your home, or drain your retirement savings. For a woman with substantial assets, that insurance isn't a cost. It's an asset protection strategy. Choice 2, the Roth conversion strategy. Here's an advanced move that most women don't think about until it's too late. If you retire before 65, you have a window, sometimes 5 years or more, where you're paying for health insurance on your own. For a self-employed woman or someone who retires early, private insurance can be $500,500 plus per month. That's expensive. But here's the sophisticated move. If you're in a low-income year before you start Medicare, it's the perfect time to do a Roth conversion. Convert money from your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. Yes, you'll pay taxes on that conversion, but because your income that year is low, you'll pay a lower tax rate. And that money sits in your Roth, grows tax-free, and you can withdraw it tax-free in retirement. Wealthy women who understand this can essentially get a discount on converting their retirement savings, because they're doing it in years when they're in lower tax brackets. Choice 3, the health savings account hack. If you're self-employed or have a high deductible health plan before 65, you can contribute to a health savings account, HSA. These are triple tax advantaged. The money goes in pre-tax, grows tax-free, and comes out tax-free if used for healthcare. Here's the hack. Many wealthy women max out their HSA contribution every single year, but they don't spend the money. They let it accumulate, they invest it. And by the time they reach 65, they have $50,000, $100,000 or more in an HSA, which they can then use to pay Medicare premiums and out-of-pocket healthcare costs tax-free. It's like having a secret healthcare fund that nobody knows about. Choice 4, the delay strategy. And this is controversial, but I want you to understand it. Most people assume they should sign up for Medicare the moment they're eligible at 65. But here's the thing. If you're still working and making good income, or if you have great coverage through a spouse's employer, delaying Medicare might make sense. If you delay Medicare Part B and you have to qualify for what's called creditable coverage, you don't pay a permanent penalty. You can delay for years. And when you finally sign up, you can catch up without extra costs. This strategy is brilliant for a woman who retires at 70 because it delays when you start paying Medicare premiums, and it also delays when your Medicare income taxation starts affecting your Social Security taxation. Wealthy women understand this. They see Medicare not as something you do at 65, but as another financial decision, like when to take Social Security, when to take IRA distributions, how to minimize taxes in a given year. Okay, so you now understand that Medicare is complex. You understand that the gaps are real. You understand that wealthy women treat Medicare strategically. But what do you actually need to do? First, know your timeline. 70% of women don't enroll in Medicare on time because they don't know when they're supposed to. Here it is. You become eligible for Medicare on the first day of the month you turn 65. Your initial enrollment period is the 3 months before, the month you turn 65, and the 3 months after. That's a 7-month window. If you enroll during this window, great. No penalties. If you don't, you start paying penalties. Permanent penalties for the rest of your life. Second, understand your coverage gaps. Before you enroll, make a list of what you actually need. Will you need ongoing prescription medications? You need Part D? Do you have dental or vision issues? You need supplemental coverage. Are you at risk for needing long-term care? You need a supplemental policy or long-term care insurance? Do you travel internationally? You need supplemental coverage that works abroad. This isn't abstract. This is your actual life. Write it down. Third, choose a strategy option A, Original Medicare, plus Medigap. This is best if you want comprehensive coverage and don't mind paying higher premiums. Option B, Medicare Advantage. This is best if you don't have chronic health issues. You live in a place with good networks and you want lower premiums. Option C, if you're still working, delay Medicare and use your employer coverage. There is no right answer. There's your answer. And your answer depends on your health, your finances, and your lifestyle. Fourth, get a professional opinion. Here's something that wealthy women do that other women often skip. They hire someone to review their Medicare options, not to sell them insurance, but to actually review it. You can call your state health insurance program SHIP. This is a federally funded program where trained advisors review your options for free. They don't sell you anything. They just help you understand. For a woman with significant assets and complex finances, a fee-only financial planner can review your Medicare decision as part of a larger retirement planning strategy. Yes, there's a cost. But a woman with $500,000 plus in assets spending $2,500 or $2,000 for professional advice on a decision that affects $100,000 plus over her lifetime. That's not an expense. That's an investment. Now, I want to take a step back for a moment, because all of this, Parts A, B, D, Medigap, Medicare Advantage, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like a puzzle with too many pieces. But here's what I want you to understand. Good healthcare is a cornerstone of a peaceful retirement, not just because you need to treat illness when it happens, but because having clarity about your healthcare, having peace of mind about your coverage, allows you to actually relax into your retirement. Think about the women you know who retired stressed. How many of them were stressed about healthcare? A lot, right? Now think about the women you know who retired peacefully. How many of them had their healthcare figured out? All of them. This is not a coincidence. When you have clarity about Medicare, when you know what's covered, when you know what's not, when you have a plan for the gaps, you stop worrying. And when you stop worrying about healthcare, you can actually enjoy your retirement. You can take that trip to Europe without fear that you'll have a medical emergency and won't be covered. You can try new things, stay active, stay engaged, because you know that if something happens, you have a plan. You can sleep peacefully at night, knowing that you've made informed decisions about your healthcare, not reactive ones. And honestly, that peace of mind is worth more than any insurance premium. Here's something that wellness experts understand. Chronic stress, the kind of stress that comes from not understanding your healthcare options, actually makes you sicker. It affects your immune system. It affects your sleep. It affects your ability to heal. Taking the time to understand Medicare isn't just about money, it's about your actual health. If you have significant wealth, and I'm talking about 1 million plusers in liquid assets, or substantial income, or rental properties, or business interests, there are additional Medicare strategies you need to know about. Strategy 1. The income bracket game. Medicare premiums are based on your income, but not all income is equal. Long-term capital gains are taxed differently than ordinary income. Qualified dividends are taxed differently. Some investment income is taxable, some isn't. A sophisticated financial strategy might involve timing when you harvest gains, when you take distributions, and how you structure your investment income to stay in a lower bracket and therefore pay lower Medicare premiums. If you have $1.5 million in assets and you're not thinking about this, you're likely paying thousands of dollars more in Medicare premiums than you need to. Strategy 2. The IRMAA threshold. IRMAA stands for Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. Basically, if you make over a certain income, you pay higher Medicare premiums. But here's the thing, the thresholds are based on your income from 2 years ago. If you're doing significant financial reorganization, selling a business, redirecting investment income, taking early IRA distributions, you need to understand how this affects Medicare premiums 2 years in the future. Women with complex finances need to look at a 3-year projection of their taxes and their Medicare premiums because they're connected. Strategy 3. The asset protection structure. If you have concerns about long-term care, and given that 70% of people over 65 will need some form of long-term care, you should have concerns. You might structure your assets to protect them while still having access to means-tested healthcare benefits if needed. This is sophisticated planning. It involves trusts, potentially Medicaid planning, understanding the rules of different states. But a woman with significant wealth who doesn't think about this is potentially leaving herself vulnerable. Here's what I want you to remember from this video. First, Medicare is not complicated because it's actually complicated. It's complicated because the system was designed by government committees from different eras that never quite came together coherently. That's not your fault. Second, the gap between what most women know about Medicare and what they actually need to know is enormous. But you're closing that gap right now just by watching this. Third, understanding Medicare is one of the most empowering financial decisions you can make. It gives you control, it gives you clarity, and it gives you peace of mind. Whether you're a woman of modest means or significant wealth, whether you have chronic health conditions or you're in perfect health, whether you're retiring in a few years or right now, understanding Medicare means understanding one of the most important expenses of your retirement. And when you understand your expenses, you control your money. You don't let your money control you. You know what the most common regret is that I hear from retired women? It's not, I wish I'd traveled more, or I wish I'd worked less. It's, I wish I'd made better decisions about healthcare when I had the chance. I wish I'd understood Medicare before I turned 65. You have that chance right now. Don't let it pass. If this video has been helpful, I'd love for you to subscribe. And if you have questions about Medicare, or if you have experiences you want to share, please leave a comment. So many women are navigating this right now, and your insight could help someone else. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week with another video on retirement planning.